You're 22, maybe 26, maybe 31. It doesn't matter. You open Instagram, someone your age just got promoted, someone else just bought a house, someone else is in Bali looking annoyingly happy, someone else got engaged with a ring that costs more than your car. You close the app. You feel like garbage. Here's the thing, you're not behind. You're just comparing yourself to a hallucination. This video is about social comparison, the psychological mechanism that makes everyone feel like they're losing a game that doesn't exist. By the end, you'll understand why your brain does this, why modern technology turned it into a superpower, and what actually helps. Humans evolved in small groups, like really small, 150 people max. That's your tribe. That's your world. In that world, comparison was useful. You looked around and figured out where you stood. Am I the best hunter? The worst? Somewhere in the middle. This information helped you survive. If you were near the bottom, you'd better step it up or you'd starve. If you were near the top, you could relax a little. Comparison was a survival tool. It gave you accurate data about your social position. It was also limited. You only saw the people in your immediate vicinity. You didn't see the best hunter in the tribe 3 valleys over. You didn't see the richest person on the other side of the continent. You compared yourself to 100 people, maybe 150. That was it. Okay, now fast forward. Today you see thousands of people every day. Not in person, through screens. Your brain didn't evolve for this. It still thinks it's comparing you to your tribe of 150. But instead, it's comparing you to the most successful people on Earth, the top 0.01% who have enough money and leisure time to post carefully curated highlights of their lives. It's like entering a race where you're competing against the top 0.001% of runners, except you're not even in the same race. You're just watching their highlights on a screen while sitting on your couch eating cereal. This is the core problem. Your comparison system is running on outdated software. It's gathering data from a world that doesn't exist. Moving on, here's a fun fact. People don't post their failures. You see the promotion? You don't see the 3 years of grinding, the imposter syndrome, the Sunday night anxiety, the boss who made them question their existence. You see the vacation? You don't see the credit card debt that funded it, or the argument they had with their partner on day 2, or the fact that they spent half the trip answering work emails. You see the engagement. You don't see the doubts, the compromises, the fact that they're getting married partly because all their friends are, and they feel behind. Social media is a highlight reel. You know this intellectually, but your emotional brain doesn't. It sees the highlight and treats it as the full picture. Let's talk about your friend Gary. No, not your actual friend. Let's use a running example. We'll call him Gary. Gary is 26. Gary just bought a house. You see Gary's house on Instagram. Nice kitchen. Big backyard. Catchin'. Finally a homeowner. Hard work pays off. Your brain immediately does the math. Gary is 26. You're also 26. Gary has a house. You have a rental apartment with a dishwasher that sounds like a jet engine. You are behind Gary. Gary is winning. But here's what you don't see. Gary's parents gave him $40,000 for the down payment. Gary's mortgage is 60% of his income. Gary can't afford to fix the water heater that just broke. Gary hasn't contributed to his retirement account in 2 years. Gary is stressed every single day about money but can't admit it because he's supposed to be winning. The highlight is, Gary bought a house. The reality is, Gary is house poor and one emergency away from disaster. You're comparing your reality to Gary's highlight. This is like comparing your raw footage to someone else's trailer. Okay, let's go deeper. Not Instagram filters. Mental filters. Your brain has a negativity bias. You evolved to notice threats more than opportunities. A missed meal could kill you. A missed compliment couldn't. So your brain prioritizes the negative. When you compare yourself to others, you don't compare your whole self to their whole self. You compare your insecurities to their strengths. You think, they're more successful, better looking, and happier than me. You don't think, they're more successful, but they hate their job. They're better looking, but they're deeply insecure about their intelligence. They seem happier, but they haven't slept well in 3 years. You're not even comparing accurately. You're comparing your inside to their outside. You know your doubts, fears, and 3 a.m. thoughts. You don't know theirs, Gary. Gary has 3 a.m. thoughts too. Gary wonders if he made a mistake. Gary looks at your freedom and feels trapped by his mortgage. But you don't see that. You just see the kitchen. Let's get analytical for a second. What does behind actually mean? Behind implies a race. A race implies a finish line. A finish line implies a clear path with clear winners and losers. Life doesn't have that. There's no finish line. There's no scoreboard. There's no universal metric where you're ranked 2,847,392nd globally. You invented the race. You invented the track. You invented the competitors, and then you decided you were losing. Maybe you think behind means not married by 28, not making six figures by 30, not owning a home by 32. Who decided that timeline? Where did it come from? Probably a combination of your parents, your peers, and random cultural assumptions you absorbed without questioning. Here's the thing, those timelines are made up. They're not laws of physics. They're not even good advice. They're just patterns that some people followed. So now you think you have to follow them too. Gary followed the pattern. Gary is on track. Gary is also miserable. Maybe being behind isn't the problem. Maybe the track is. There's a concept in psychology called relative deprivation. It's the feeling that you're worse off than the people you compare yourself to, even if you're objectively doing fine. You can make $70,000 a year and feel broke if everyone around you makes 100. You can make 40,000 and feel rich if everyone around you makes 20. Your satisfaction isn't determined by what you have. It's determined by what you have relative to what you think you should have. And what you think you should have is determined by who you compare yourself to. Compare yourself to a billionaire? You have nothing. Compare yourself to a medieval peasant? You're living like royalty with your air conditioning, antibiotics, and unlimited access to cat videos. This is why social media is so destructive. It forces you to compare yourself to the top 0.01% constantly. Your brain doesn't adjust for selection bias, it just sees the gap and generates pain. Moving on. Psychologists divide social comparison into two types, upward and downward. Upward comparison is comparing yourself to people doing better than you. This can be motivating in small doses. Oh, that's possible. I want that too. But in large doses, it's paralyzing. You just feel inadequate. Downward comparison is comparing yourself to people doing worse. This can boost your mood temporarily, at least I'm not that guy. But it's also kind of toxic. You're building your self-esteem on someone else's struggle. Neither is great, but upward comparison is the one destroying your generation. You're constantly bombarded with images of success. Not normal success, extreme success. Success that used to be visible only in magazines now appears in your pocket every 4 seconds. Your brain doesn't have a built-in filter for this. It just absorbs. And then it concludes, everyone is doing better than me. I'm behind. Cool. Now let's talk about why you can't stop. Comparison creates anxiety. Anxiety creates more comparison. You feel behind, so you check social media to see where you stand. You see more success. You feel more behind. You check again. The cycle repeats. Social media companies know this. They design their products to exploit it. The algorithm doesn't show you random content. It shows you content that keeps you engaged. And what keeps you engaged? Emotion. Specifically, negative emotions like envy, insecurity, and fear. If you felt perfectly content, you'd close the app. The app doesn't want you content. It wants you scrolling. So you scroll, you see Gary's kitchen again. Maybe someone else's promotion. Maybe an engagement ring. You feel bad. You keep scrolling hoping to find something that makes you feel better. You don't. This is the feedback loop, and it's very profitable for companies that aren't you. Success used to be private. You got a promotion, you told your family and friends. Maybe you bought a round at the bar. That was it. Now success is content. If you achieved something and didn't post it, did it even happen? This creates a distortion field. You see every success, every milestone, every accomplishment from everyone you've ever known plus millions of strangers. You see none of the struggles, the failures, the ordinary days. The result, you think everyone is succeeding constantly. You think success is the default. You think anything less than constant winning means you're behind. But here's the reality. Most people are just doing okay. They have good days and bad days. They make progress and backslide. They feel behind too. Gary feels behind. The person whose vacation photos you envied feels behind. The person who got promoted feels behind. Everyone feels behind. Which means no one is behind. It's just a feeling, not a fact. Here's another problem. You have multiple timelines in your head, and they contradict each other. Timeline 1, your parents. They want you to be stable, house, spouse, kids, steady job, by 30. Ideally, timeline 2, your friends. They're all over the place. Some are married with kids. Some are still in school. Some are grinding in their careers. Some are drifting. There's no pattern. Timeline 3, the internet. The internet wants you to be rich, hot, and free. Retire at 35. Travel the world, have passive income. Look amazing while doing it. Timeline 4, your own desires. Maybe you actually want. Maybe you don't know yet. Maybe you've been so busy comparing yourself to other people's paths that you never figured out yours. These timelines conflict. You can't follow all of them, but you try to, and then you feel behind on all of them. Gary followed timeline 1. Gary's parents are thrilled. Gary's Instagram followers are impressed. Gary is trapped. Maybe timeline 1 isn't your timeline, but you don't know because you've never stopped to ask. Every hour you spend comparing is an hour you're not spending on anything else. Comparison doesn't build skills, it doesn't create value, it doesn't improve your life, it just makes you feel bad. The energy you spend worrying about Gary's kitchen could be spent learning something, building something, or just enjoying your actual life, the one you're living right now, not the hypothetical one you think you should have. There's an economic concept called opportunity cost. It's what you give up when you choose one thing over another. The opportunity cost of comparison is enormous. You're trading your limited time and mental energy for nothing. You get nothing back. Imagine paying a subscription fee for a service that just sends you messages about how you're failing. You'd cancel immediately. But that's what comparison is, and you're subscribed by default. Moving on, there's one comparison that's actually useful. Compare yourself to your past self, not in a toxic way, not "I should be further along by now." That's just comparing yourself to a fantasy version of you that doesn't exist. Compare yourself to actual past you, 1 year ago, 5 years ago. What did you know then that you don't know now? What can you do now that you couldn't do then? What relationships, skills, experiences have you gained? This comparison is fair, it uses real data, and it usually reveals progress you've been ignoring while you focused on Gary's kitchen. You're not behind your past self, you're ahead. You have more information, more experience, more capacity, even if it doesn't feel like it. This is the only comparison that helps. Use it sparingly. Okay, so comparison is making you miserable. What do you do about it? First, limit your inputs. You can't compare to what you don't see. Mute, unfollow, or delete accounts that make you feel behind. Not out of jealousy, out of self-preservation. Your mental health is worth more than Gary's engagement metrics. Second, question your timelines. Where did they come from? Do you actually want the things you think you want? Or do you just want to stop feeling behind? Those are different things. Third, define your own metrics. What does success look like for you? Not for your parents, not for Instagram. For you? Write it down. Be specific. Otherwise, you'll keep chasing a finish line that doesn't exist. Fourth, focus on process over position. Behind is a position judgment. It assumes you should be somewhere you're not. But life isn't a position, it's a process. You're somewhere. That's the only fact. The question isn't, should I be somewhere else? The question is, what do I do from here? Fifth, remember that everyone is faking it. Gary's house is a highlight. The vacation is a highlight. The promotion is a highlight. Everyone has doubts, fears, and 3 a.m. thoughts. You're not uniquely broken, you're just uniquely aware of your own brokenness. You know what behind actually means? It means you're not where you think you should be. That's it. It's a gap between expectation and reality. But where did the expectation come from? Did you choose it? Or did you absorb it from a culture that profits from your insecurity? Companies sell you products by making you feel inadequate. Influencers get engagement by making you feel like you're missing out. Social media platforms make money by keeping you anxious and scrolling. The feeling of being behind is profitable for them, not for you. You're not behind. You're just being manipulated. Let's run through the whole thing fast. Your brain evolved to compare you to a small tribe. Now it compares you to the entire internet. That's a bug, not a feature. You compare your reality to other people's highlights. This is like comparing your raw footage to their trailer. It's not fair data. Relative deprivation means your satisfaction depends on who you compare yourself to. Compare to the top 0.01% constantly, and you'll always feel broke. The timelines you're supposedly behind on were invented by other people. They might not even be what you want. Comparison has an opportunity cost. Every hour spent feeling behind is an hour not spent building forward. The only useful comparison is you versus past you. That one uses real data. Everyone feels behind, which means no one is. It's a collective hallucination. You're not behind. You're just comparing yourself to a fantasy. The race doesn't exist. The track was invented by people who profit from your insecurity. The finish line is made up. You're here. That's the only fact. What you do from here is what matters. Stop watching Gary's kitchen. Build your own. If this video made you slightly less anxious about Gary, hit like. If you want to feel better about your entire life, subscribe. And if you're watching this on your phone at 2 a.m., maybe close the app and go to sleep.